Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Jensen from Dean's Chat. If you're on the fence as to whether you want to join the American Podiatric Medical Association, jump on in. It's a new APMA. Whether it's advocacy concerns, scope of practice, billing and coding, consider membership at the APMA as your professional insurance. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host of the Dean's Chat podcast. Once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Joanna Richey. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Jeff. How you doing?
I am doing fabulous, and I am so excited about today's guest. I can't wait to get into it.
I am so excited too. This has been a long time in the planning. I met Dr. Sotile a little over a year ago now, and I am excited to share all of his wisdom with the world. So,
that's great. Dr. Sotile, we're very informal on Dean's Chat, and if it's okay with you, let's go first names, Wayne and Joe and Jeff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Please do. It's so nice to be with both of you, Jeff and Joe.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again so much, Wayne. I know this has been a lot of planning in the background to get here, but we absolutely appreciate your time coming to talk with our audience. Just to start a little bit with your background, Dr. Sotile is the life coach for physicians. You're a clinical psychologist by trade and an international speaker and thought leader on physician behavior and resilience for high-performing healthcare professionals and their teams. Your areas of expertise are in physician resilience, leadership development, healthcare consultation, health psychology, including cardiac psychology, stress management, and marriage and family life. We are excited to have you here on Dean's Chat, where we talk all things podiatric medicine as one of the subspecialties within the healthcare system. And your message is one that I think is valuable to everyone. We'll get into some of the details of the resiliency and some of the work that you've done in that space. But also to go back to the very beginning, you got your bachelor's degree from Louisiana State University and went on to obtain your PhD in clinical psychology from the University of South Carolina, followed by a medical psychology internship with Duke University. I'd love to hear what that experience was like for you and how that impacted kind of the trajectory of your career.
It was very impactful. And it's funny, that was the beginning of one of those experiences where, you're doing something, you look back on your life, which seemed like a series of random events, but then it's like, oh, those were stepping stones that got me here. I was originally a pre-med student. I always thought I wanted to be a physician, but found that I didn't love basic sciences, but psychology came real naturally to me. So I gravitated toward none of this was, we have to remember, I'm almost like 150 years old. So when I went to school right after the Civil War, I'm not that old, but fields like family systems medicine, human sexuality, the merger of family systems thinking and family medicine, family systems medicine, the application of practical cognitive behavioral approaches to helping people cope with medical problems. None of that existed 40 years ago. I've been in practice for 46 years now. My first job, I was on the faculty at the medical school at Wake Forest 46 years ago. And so I ended up at Duke because at the time there were three meccas of training in what used to be called medical psychology. It's now called clinical and health psychology. Duke, University of Colorado School of Medicine, and University of Oregon Health Sciences Center. And I ended up going to Duke. But it was a merger of my interest in medicine, but the psychological aspect of medicine. So I was always interested in the psychology of medical care. What happened after the diagnosis, or what happened during the process of coping with chronic illnesses or seeking medical care. And then, so I ended up working a tremendous amount with medical patients. And the short version of the story is my wife and I went into practice after a short while on the faculty at Wake Forest because my department fell apart. And because we had a medically based practice, physicians referred tremendous numbers of patients of all sorts to us. And then the physicians themselves started to come to see us, as did medical students and residents from Wake Forest. And soon we realized, reading the literature, that where there were articles published about the psychology of physicians based on ends of 30 case studies or 50 case studies. At the time, we'd had over 1,200 physicians as clients of ours. To date, we've had over 13,000 physicians and our life mates who come from all around the country to work with. Our daughters now run our practice. I speak and consult around the country, and my wife is retired now. So it's been a phenomenal connecting of the dots between learning about psychology, learning about high-performing people, learning about the complexity of medical care from both ends, and then settling into studying the most amazing cohort of people, high-performing health professionals. And given what you go through, particularly physicians of all specialties and all variants, nobody works like you work. And one of our concepts forever has been it was a long-winded way of thanking you for the work you're doing, promoting awareness of and the importance of this stuff. Where I live is in the biopsychosocial spiritual underbelly of life in medicine. That's what we've gotten an education on from the countless thousands of hours of privileged private glimpses into the works of high-performing medical professionals, their families, their teams, and their organizations. So day to day, I feel like I call on information that I learned from every step of my journey, from getting a PhD in clinical psychology to getting advanced training in marriage family systems, because every health system is like a great big old chronically dysfunctional, stable family, right? And how do we work with these folks, try to help them get along with each other better, which is the vital variable in promoting well-being, resilience, or if you don't have that, enjoying working with the people you're working with, it's the primary predictor of ill-being. We can say more about that as we go.
Yeah. Jeff, your thoughts?
Yeah, Wayne, this is so fascinating because what the kind of phrase that went into my head was the perils of high performance. Yeah. And it seems to me that most high-achieving people just kind of view that as part and parcel, right? It's like, that's the price you pay. But that's not always true, is it?
Well, you pay that price inevitably, and how you manage it determines what happens next. I can tell you the apocryphal example of this. It's like we're too hard-headed in medicine to pay attention based on ourselves because we're all such extraordinary people. And I don't mean that cynically, I mean it literally. But when people like the Navy SEALs are saying, look, we're all just coping animals. But we've done some work with Navy SEALs groups that are now places like Arena Labs, which is a great outfit run by former Navy SEAL leaders who were charged with introducing human factors, advanced training in human factors in high performance into SEAL training. So training these performance machines how to use self-compassion, empathy, communication, safety checks with each other, mind-body exercises, borrowed from sports psychology, many of us do. And look, we know you're an extraordinary, you're the 1% of 1%. I'd say the same thing for you incredible medical providers of all sorts, the truth is, but particularly anybody working in a medical specialty. We know you rock, man, but the question is, you want to keep rocking, and you've got to deal with your humanness. Now, let me just emphasize, what we've got going on now is a wonderful, incredible ending of the conspiracy of silence. Some of us started talking about the so-called conspiracy of silence back in the 70s. We need to get our head out of the clouds, no matter how extraordinary you are. If you want to sustain high performance, you got to do something other than this thing you've gotten so great at doing, which is just go numb and keep on going. Yeah. And that's the bane of the existence of high-performing people, having incomplete stress reactions. It's not the sympathetic arousal that gets you. It's the impoverished parasympathetic calming. Joe, going back to connect the dot, we learned that in cardiac psychology, studying hot reactor type A people. It's not sympathetic arousal that correlates with increased, coagulation and disturbed electrophysiology and cardiac. It's not the hot reaction, it's the slow recovery. So it's not sympathetic arousal. That's why one of the things that we're getting wrong is, God, there's so many pieces of this, my mind starts colliding with itself. Forgive me. So here's what I'm excited about. We've entered the conspiracy of silence. Everybody's talking about this. You can't pick up a medical journal without people talking about burnout, resilience, and so forth. That's the good news. Here's the bad news. Well, wait, further good news. Everybody's got something to say that's worth hearing. I am really like a learning machine. Anybody been through burnout has something to say about how to cope with burnout. Anybody who's ever been drunk and got sober has something to say about how to get sober. Anybody ever had a fight with their spouse or life mate has something to say about how to work. But those people don't necessarily need to be national spokespersons for evidence-based approaches, because there is a science to this in discovering what differentiates the people who get through all of this tough stuff and come out stronger. That's what resilience is. It's not, I get through the tough stuff and then I go back to baseline. Is I get through, it's akin to post-trauma growth syndrome. I get through the tough stuff and I come out better, having gone through the tough stuff. Well, there's a science that about what tactics and strategies differentiate people who bifurcate into that branch, the resilience branch. And some of that stuff is very counterintuitive. So, for example, intuitively, we would say, well, people who have better work-life balance will be more resilient. It depends on how you define work-life balance. Because here's the deal, Lucille, you can work half time in a job you don't love. It's going to solve none of your work-life balance. Our research is very robust on this. We've had 4 peer-reviewed, published national surveys of physician cohorts and life mates that have shown it's not how much you work that's going to determine your family satisfaction or dissatisfaction with your work-life imbalance. It's your mood when you come home from work. Yeah. And so there's an inverse relationship between how frequently a health professional comes home angry about work, freaked out about work, gossiping about people at work, bad-mouthing the group he or she works in or the health system they work in. That varies inversely with satisfaction with that health professional in the family. Now, the reason that's important is whoever your support system is, not everybody's married, as their attitudes go toward your work and what it's doing to you, so will your attitudes toward your work and the people at work be shaped. Now we get to vital variable number 2 from 40 years of our research. You want to protect your well-being, your career satisfaction, outcomes at work. Whoever you love when you go home, get along with the people with whom you're working during your shifts. It is the most vital variable that predicts well-being or ill-being, as well as outcomes in the workplace. So part of the intuitive stuff that's being touted from the mountaintops, and I'm glad we've ended the conspiracy of silence. We got all kind of podcasts, we got all kind of books, we got all kind of things written by people based on their own experiences. Hooray, we're not silent about it anymore. But now we need to calm down and get back to embracing what does the science as it exists say? And part of what the science says is good work from teenage years to the day we die. Good work is good for people's health. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. For the sake of wanting to protect ourselves from burnout, people are having ambivalence about full engagement. This gets back in my long-winded way, Joe, to you can work half-time in a job you're not fully engaged in and enjoying the people with whom you're doing it. It's going to solve none of your burnout problems nor any of your work-life stuff. So it's great that we're propagating information. We've got to propagate the right information.
Absolutely. And this is why I was so excited to have you on, Wayne, is I feel like having, as most people through the COVID pandemic, I had my own experience with burnout that was pretty substantial. And what I appreciated so much about so you and I first met at the 1AO course that they had done here in Phoenix on physician resilience. And I appreciated so much that your approach, your definition of burnout, I think was really useful. And so I'm going to read it because I took all these notes, Jeff, during his talk. And so I literally going back through all my little notes to all of the things that I wanted to bring back up to the surface. And there's so many things for us to talk about, but I think that this one was really helpful to me. And as I've talked to friends who are in their own experiences with burnout, either actively or recovering, burnout often starts insidiously. And burnout occurs when your typical resilience doesn't occur in your normal restoration period. Yeah. And that to me was so valuable because we know the kind of traditional definition of burnout is this idea of emotional exhaustion, cynicism, depersonalization starts, and then you get this reduced sense of accomplishment, imposter syndrome, all of that. But I think what's hard, and I'll switch to I language at this moment, what was hard for me in those moments is, and you touched on this, I didn't think in my head, well, I'm exceptional, I'm not falling prey to this. But in my head, it's I can handle this. I can manage this just like all of the other things that got me here to manage it. But what I did to manage it was work harder and longer and get away from all the things that brought me joy by trying to get all of these other things done. And in that process, I lit my own fuse and I threw it off the cliff, right? And so I'm curious, when you started and to also, I don't want to not get through some of the incredible work that you've done, but you've published more than 10 books. You've been nationally recognized, internationally recognized, either authored or co-authored, a couple titles, one of which is on my next of reading list, Thriving in Healthcare, A Guide to Choosing Resilience Over Burnout in Your Busy Life, The Thriving Physician, How to Curb Burnout and Choose Resilience Throughout Your Medical Career. And then this is the one I'm really excited about, Letting Go of What's Holding You Back, Maximize Your Happiness in Work, Love, and Life. And you've also, again, brought in the evidence base. So you're incredibly well published in the peer-reviewed medical literature as well. We won't go through all the titles of those, but including specifically journals for the Journal of American Medical Association, Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery, Mayo Clinic Proceedings, the Journal of American College of Cardiology, World Neurosurgery, and then Clinical OBGYN, and many more as well. But so incredibly well established in evidence-based support. How did you come up with that definition, or what was it about resilience and burnout that got you there?
That's a great question. And again, it goes back to, I was treating thousands of heart patients. We invented cardiac rehabilitation, as we know it, multidisciplinary approaches to working with heart patients when I was on the faculty at Wake Forest. And I noticed while everybody gets distressed when they get the diagnosis, the majority of people end up saying 18 months, 2 years later, this is the best thing ever happened to me. Those are the resilient ones. And it's similar to people who go through recovery. It's similar to cancer patients. It's similar to physicians who go through burnout. Burnout is not this is what we got wrong in the literature. Burnout is not a diagnosis of a chronic disease. It's a temporary, and to expand on the definition that I need to pay more attention to what I say if people are going to write it down. Oh God, what did
Only
I say?
People like me.
What did I say in that meeting? It was, I'm complimented that you remember that, Joe. And to elaborate a little bit, here's a useful way to think about it. We got to this through observation. When things are complicated, look for the vital variables. They explain the most variance. That's what chaos theory tells us. And what we noticed is that it is useful to think about burnout as being energy depletion. Depletement. How do you say that word? Depleted.
Depletement?
Yeah. Depletement. Energy depletement. When I went to LSU, they didn't teach me to speak. Energy depletement. It's a temporary depletion of energy that you need, particularly to cope with people problems, but other problems too. And the difficulty with the double down strategy that all of you tough people do is it just depletes more energy. And more and more we've talked about, you've got to protect your margin. No margin, no good coping. No margin, no happiness. No margin, no good engagement. That margin of biological, psychological, emotional, and spiritual energy. You people live on the borderline of depletion. That's why just a little bit more or a little bit less in the course of a given workday. Somebody doesn't show, I have a time off, or if you're on call, a few more, a few fewer calls make all the difference in restoring your margin, right? So that I really think it demystifies a tremendous amount about burnout when we think, oh, it's about energy management. So what are the things that I do? Who are the people I interact with? How are the ways I think that are allowing me to make deposits or costing me withdrawals from that precious energy stuff? If I'm doom scrolling, making sure all the people I thought were idiots yesterday are still idiots this morning. As soon as I wake up, you just wasted half your coping energy, man. You're not even out of bed or out of your house yet. This is precious stuff. Pay attention to that which you focus on magnifies. And so that's how we came up with the observation that, wow, some of these people replenish their coping energy, renew their enthusiasm, and their rethink and reframe. They still got the same hassles, sometimes got bigger hassles. In our controlled studies, sometimes the heart disease was more severe in some of these thriving people than in lesser. Or as I consulted with hundreds in delivered thousands with our medical organizations and delivered thousands of addresses around the country, speaking with people from every work setting you can probably imagine. Nobody lives in a hassle-free environment, but some people sure are thriving. Yeah. They're dealing with the same distressing stuff and inefficiencies. How do they think and how do they deal? It's all what they do is protect their margin, simplistically put, so that they've got some energy to once again to go to the mat with whoever it is they've got to deal with, trying to negotiate some new outcomes in the workplace. Protect your margin. It's important.
Love that. Jeff, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I love the protect your margin. How does it work just to cut out the things that suck the life out of you, Wayne? Because if you're not enjoying something, at what point do you say, hey, I've had enough, right?
You know who's great at doing that? People who are over 50. Carl Jung is probably one of the greatest thinkers ever, psychological. And Carl Jung said something interesting. He said, no matter how precocious one is, you're only rehearsing for maturity until you get into your mid-50s. Now, I read that when I was 38. I read that and I was thinking, what is this knucklehead talking about? The older I got, the more I realized what he's talking about. Now, it's easy to say, oh, well, you get mid-50, you got enough money in the bank, you got enough cachet with the organization, you can start culling. But you know what? Controlled studies don't show that. What they do show is people get happier at that stage of life and beyond, but they don't quit their stinking job. They don't divorce their spouse with whom most of us married over 20 years. We have on average 12 chronic unresolved issues we aggravate each other with on a regular basis. This is the happily married ones of us. This is from the University of Washington research. What we learn is to be more gracious and tolerant, and we rethink and we reframe.
Interesting.
And so sometimes people do make changes. They go from the earlier stages of life, it's like throwing paint on a canvas and whatever. The answer is yes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it. Now I'm going to rearrange it and try to make a life out of the painting. You get mid-50s, you start sculpting more. Just because they invited me to be on that committee doesn't mean I want to advance to vice president. Just because it would please them, I'm going to start saying it. So people do get more courageous about, and this is where the courage comes, tolerating the anxiety, the deep anxiety we feel about saying no. Because that's not the horse we rode into success. Listen, in your neck of the woods, I was coaching a physician today about needing to manage his life better, and he dared to say no to a colleague about something. Now, he didn't say no much. He hardly ever says no, but it made him so nervous to say no. And I told him, I've been doing this since the cows came home, and I am still anxious about, I was invited to come to your neck of the, where are you guys in Seattle? Where are you?
Phoenix.
Oh, you're in Phoenix.
Yep.
I was invited to go give a talk in Seattle to a conference of 150 healthcare executives. It would have been a real smart thing to do because it would have generated a lot of invitations to go speak. But I said no because of the opportunity cost involved. It just about gave me the hives. And this was like 2 months ago. I'm still worrying about it. You know, it's not easy to make those straight. So eliminating the stuff that are the hassles is a very effective thing to do if you can do it. 2 hurdles there. Number one, there are no hassle-free homes, families. There are no hassle-free work groups, teams, or organizations. You can't eliminate all the hassles. Mm-hmm. The people who are thriving don't have fewer hassles. They have more uplifts. Now, that's where volition, we are in charge of the uplifts. We're not in charge of the under-resourced healthcare system, or workplace. We can lobby for it. We can do what we can do to try to influence, to make it better, to make it less filled with hassles. But on a given Tuesday, you're immediately in charge of, do I find meaning in this? Do I recognize this as a moment of joy or gratitude? Do I recognize you, my friend, as someone I'm thankful that you're in my life, and say to you, thank you for what you do, Jeffrey. It allows me to do what I do. That is the way people who thrive interact. That's how they think, and that's how they behave. They don't stop fighting against the hassles, but they don't eliminate all the hassles. If they could, we would.
Right.
And in coaching, if we could take away all your hassles, we would too, but we can't. But we sure can help you focus on what's right and good. And that's not the same as putting paint over rust. It's the same as this is my favorite phrase, in the meantime thinking. Look, I hope for you all that stuff clears up, but it's not going to happen between now and like 4 o'clock today. So in the meantime, what you going to do?
Right.
Yeah. In the meantime, try doing these things. You'll find there's some sunlight over here. Go over here. Some good stuff.
Did you know APMA provides help with public health initiatives such as fall prevention, opioid abuse prevention, and addressing health disparities?
Did you know the APMA provides over $400,000 in scholarships annually to students pursuing podiatric medicine, helping the next generation of foot and ankle specialists?
If you're serious about this profession, if you want to grow, to lead, to make a lasting impact, join APMA today.
So Wayne, I think about sports psychology, and I think about the Bob Rotellas, people in the golf world, in different sports, and they're dealing with people in their prime with a short career, right? They're in their prime from whether it's tennis or football, somewhere between 20 and 35. But when you start dealing with the top doctors, they're not hitting their prime until they're much older, and they can stay in their prime for a long time. Is it any wonder that there's not tremendous challenges? Not just, they're great at what they do, but the rest of the world, their family, their hobbies, a lot of things take a hit. Is that some of the issue also? And then, like you said, not being able to say no?
Oh, it's the most poignant acts of heroism, the most poignant scenes of tragedy in our lives collectively have come from witnessing the lives of medical families. In so many instances, these are unsung heroes. Heroes create safe spaces for other people. Mary and I wrote that sentence when we were writing a book about medical families in 1994. And we were talking not just about the physician who goes out there, and skips his own or her own birthday and their kid's birthday party, but we're talking about the families who honor the work that is the noble work of medicine and deal with, once again, our loved one who's the high-performing medical professional is not here with us. I mean, it's just the quiet acts of heroism are amazing. But then also the incredibly sad and often lonely lifestyles that come from an uncontrolled lifestyle. And let me just say, I am the world's biggest admirer of and cheerleader for the nobility that is a career in medicine. You are the heroes that create safe spaces for other people. And, when COVID happened, everybody had the healthcare hero signs. I said, send me some royalties. We're the ones that started saying that was not fashion with us. That was admiration born of in the trenches, watching it happen. But the price we pay if we don't find the courage to fight the good fight. The good fight is, I can't let there's a concept, the medicine is like the unrelenting mistress that will take our loved ones away from us, or whatever the masculinized version of mistress is, that is the third party that will use up all of our vibrant energy and all of our grace, and our family gets the leftovers. We've got to do better than that. And this gets to the big challenge. We got to learn to think positive. We got to learn to do yoga. We got to learn to eat more healthily. We got to learn to do those fundamentals. That's one wing of the bird. The other wing of the bird, we got to have families that are attended to. Over 85% of families in our research, spouses, life mates of physicians say, as a family, we feel lonely. We used to be honored. Those of us been at this for a while, we used to hold you up as a medical family. And now our neighbors think their stresses are just as severe as our stresses. They don't understand the differentiator when, as a cohort, sixfold more people in physicians work 60 plus hours a week than any other profession we study. The work-life stresses are, so we got to hold up medical families. That's the second wing of the bird. Yeah, learn to eat your vegetables, learn to think positively, learn mind-body time. Secondly, we've got to do something as organizations to support medical families. The third wing of the bird, we've got to work locally with the people with whom we work, not wait for Dean Jensen to come out of the sky to get us to get along. It's up to us to decide if you're a squad of 9 Navy SEALs, you take responsibility for getting along with each other. You don't wait for the head of the Navy to come show you how to do it. And then the fourth wing of the bird is, nationally, we really do have to advocate for, promote tremendous change in allocation of resources for healthcare to make things more sustainable and more efficient. These are heavy lifts. This is not, let me just, it's use. I don't want to sound cynical. It's useful for anybody to tell their story about their journey. It's useful. But when you look at the scope of work that we need to do, we all need to be participating in understanding, boy, this is going to require a lot of change over a lot of time. Now let's get to it. One place we're making great progress is in residency well-being. Yeah. Joe, you alluded to that in some of our correspondence. And I'm interested in, what are you guys doing?
First, so most of our interaction is with students, so medical students.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So
even better, it starts there.
It absolutely does. And it's funny, this is also, I can empathize. I started medical school literally 20 years ago, which those words are hard to come out of my mouth. But I remember my second year, they had a talk about wellness, and that, they had pooled all these students, and like 80% of them were burnt out, and they were students. Right. And I remember sitting there and feeling that way. Like, yeah, I feel that way, but I didn't want to admit it or do anything about it. Cause I'm like, that's part of the job. Like in my head, it was ingrained that like, buck up, buttercup, like that's right. What you signed up for, right? And it's interesting, as I've had conversations with other faculty and other programs, the way that this change in perspective of wellness, and you said a word, Wayne, that I have finally been able to settle on what my opinion is on this, because there are a lot of faculty that feel like right now, and same with it's residents and students, we can kind of group those two cohorts together for training purposes, that they're kind of entitled, they expect all this time off, but they're not willing to then come in and work hard. And my flip side argument is always been, that has not been my personal experience with these students. These students are remarkable. They are engaged, they are excited, they have passion and purpose behind what they want to do and how they want to do it. But they are much better at setting a boundary of what they are willing, like what works and what's not going to work. And I think that the connecting, as you said, ownership. You were I don't remember exactly what the phrase was in there, but that personal ownership. This is where I think it really, what my job is helping these young people recognize the impacts of decisions. I am all about supporting you and where your boundaries are and what you need to fill your cup back up to come back and be fully charged. But then when you're here, you have to be fully charged. You have to be fully engaged. Otherwise, we are not going to be successful. And as I've talked to some of these faculty that are attending with residents, I feel like that might be where the disconnect. And I'm very interested in your take. And Jeff, I'm interested in your take too, because I know you've had students for many years and residents. So we'll start with Wayne and then we'll go back to Jeff.
Well, I would say, I think it's a fascinating and important topic. And again, it's one of these in the psychosocial spiritual psychosocial spiritual underbelly, things are always multifactorial. Some variables contradict but don't cancel each other.
Yeah.
We're making such great progress with that one variable. Another one is, we need to get a realistic application of this. And sometimes those things collide. There are some whiny young people, one variable, that are for the most part. I did a lecture recently on the 5 generations in today's healthcare workplace. There are 5 cohorts as these things go. And one of my phrases I borrowed from someplace I wish I could remember, because I always like to reference, I've never met a generation. I've only met people of different ages. How many of you know computer moronic old people like me? How many of you know incredibly tech savvy old people like me? Yeah. How many of you know lazy medical students how many of you know medical students or residents you got to run out of the hospital because of work restrictions? And we're dealing with people. Now, when we ill-define what well-being is, we create false standards that result in people are courageous enough to fight the good fight. And we need to make sure we adequately define the good fight. There are 2 places we have set up young people, actually, and people of all cohorts, to have distress unnecessarily. And I often say this, you've heard me say this, Joe. I spent the first 40 years of my career helping create and propagate two concepts I'm going to spend the rest of my career helping correct, because we've created iatrogenic harm. The attempted solution has perpetuated the problem. The first was the mythical balanced life.
Yeah.
That started in the 60s in the 70s. Those of us who are feminists particularly promoted, look, you can have it all. Men and women. You can have thriving careers, great intimate relationship, family, and kick it at work. And we set up everybody to chase a ghost because nobody's got a balanced life.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing, how much I enjoy doing it, I feel guilty or anxious about what I'm not doing. So we've got that chronic struggle going. But yet that becomes, it's insidious. It's like a birthright. If I work in a really good place, so I'm getting educated in a really good school, if I am life partnered with a really good person, or I have partners at work, really good people, I'm going to be the first person in the history of the world who has a balanced life. I mean, come on, man, we need to rethink it. The second is that we created burnout hysteria. It would underdefine the term. We have exaggerated the chronicity of it. It's not true that 1 in 5 it's not true that 1 in 2 physicians are burned out. What's true is about, according to Christina Maslach, who invented the scale we all use, about 16% of physicians are chronically burned out. A meta-analysis of the surgical literature recently suggested 3 to 6% of surgeons are chronically burned out, not 94%. No, we need to pay attention to anybody who's got any symptoms to help them correct course. So if this stuff is run wild and unrefined, much less if hyperbole is perpetuated with irresponsible rhetoric, print or media rhetoric, what happens is this kind of misstep. I was consulting at a children's hospital a couple of years ago, and the chief medical officer asked me to go work with the residents. I said, okay, I'll come. She said, we got 4 first-year residents who are refusing to do some work. So I went to meet with this room full of residents, said, what's the deal? These 4 people, this was September, they had just gotten there. 4 people, I don't know when they got there, the end of August. 4 people said, we read the burnout literature, including some of your stuff. We want to have good work-life balance. We're refusing to do something. We're only going to work this much. And, it was a tough moment. I had like a good Wayne, bad Wayne moment. And bad Wayne wanted to say, you only been here like 12 minutes. You hadn't earned the right to burn out yet. Get your butt. Yeah, I didn't say that, but I thought that. No. Good Wayne said, look, it's good that you want to take care of yourself. But we need to talk about, to your point, Joe, you're choosing to join the club that results in you advancing to the major leagues. Yeah. You don't have to join this club. There are easier ways to go, but you can't end up playing in the majors unless you learn how to do all this stuff. Yeah. And so we got to help people understand the bane of margin is ambivalence. You can't swim half in and half out of a lake. If you fall in, you're going to drown. You got to decide, I'm here. I'm going to be all in. And so that's part of the training we've got to give students and residents. And incidentally, I think that, I've thought about this analogy after you and I interacted about, there's a lot of good resilience training or well-being work being done in medical training, not as much done for faculty. Now, some for faculty. I mean, I've been consulting ongoing every month. This is the 24th year of my contract with Atrium, Advocate Atrium in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Sanger Heart and Vascular Institute. There are institutions that hire people like me to be available to help there, and they've got many other folks available too at Atrium to be available to promote and monitor kind of well-being. But across the country, we're doing a much better job institutionally attending to matters of well-being for residents and students. It's sort of like if you're in a clinical trial, you get increased surveillance and tender loving care if you're a patient in a clinical trial. That's sort of what medical training is like when it comes to this well-being stuff. We don't have, I lecture at thousands of grand rounds and those kinds of things, but a lot of times they're one-offs, whereas residents or students have a curriculum about emotional intelligence or self-awareness, and so eventually we're going to build enough skills that would push people like me out of business.
With the human condition, I'm not so sure about that one.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Joe. I'll just give my 2 cents on this. I've seen a lot of changes over time because that old time-tested theory of I did it, you have to do it, was embedded in medicine at all levels, school, residency, practice. But then it was funny, we had a leadership development meeting at the university, which included everybody at all levels of the university, deans, service, student services, and all the administration. And there is active, very serious discussions about curriculum, testing methodologies, the lab experience, the number of hours we expect the students that reasonably to study and deliver and teach them how to learn at the best way that they each learn, which is individual. But you both mentioned that, and I agree with this 100%. You got to be all in. You're either when you're there, you got to be in, and when you're not, you're recharging your battery doing the things you love to do. And so I think that effort is underway. The funny part of that leadership retreat was that our in-house counsel raised his hand and he said, well, in law, we haven't changed our education since the days of Hippocrates. and I think that was a funny statement, right? But nonetheless, I think it's important that we are acknowledging that students have needs that haven't been addressed before. We are acknowledging that there's a better way, and we have the technology, and we've got students that, to Joe's point, are very bright. They're very worldly. They've been around the world when they get out of college. Not like us. I mean, we joke around that we were still eating dirt, right, or something. But I think that all of those things together are on the front burner, and I don't think we can accept, Wayne, as you said, in the meantime, we're going to have to do this, and this. It is on the front burner, and changes are being made. And Joe, you can attest to this with our curriculum. We are continuing to make changes in our curriculum to what I think is a great term, decompress students.
That's great.
So that they can learn what they need to know. They can get experiential education that will reinforce what they need to know from a foundational perspective. So I'm very thrilled. And I realize it's a one-off, right? It's our university, but I sense that when I go to dean's meetings in our profession, this is high-level priority at all the schools. We don't want to train people that hate life, hate the profession, and they're burnt out early.
Yeah, I got to say, one of the saddest things that is that we witness, and it's all over the country for decades, is just whatever context, open the whole medical staff or the whole faculty and their life mate presentation, or we do a grand rounds, or departmental grand rounds, or we do a presentation at a leadership conference in the healthcare system. Seated over there, they're always over there in the fifth row or so, my wife and I, is this stone-faced, graying-haired guy with his arms folded, glaring. And I was thinking back in the day when my wife and I used to do this together, we would always spot the same person or persons. She'd be thinking too, this is going to be the one. Because this can be the one, not to ask the obnoxious, this can be the one that comes up after the talk with tears in his eyes. It is almost always a him saying, I wish someone had told us this in medical school. It might have helped. And then tears happen. It might have helped save my marriage, save my health, save me from regret. That's the saddest thing. That kudos to you guys. It is noble work. Sometimes it's lonely work, because it doesn't show an immediate return on investment. but it does matter. Let me just give a postscript to your legal counsels. We hadn't changed anything. Atrium lent me out to the top 3 law firms in North Carolina, in Charlotte, North Carolina, some years ago to do stress management training with them. And so I got up to snuff on this. If you look at what happens now this trend is starting to shift, but if you look at first aid medical students compared to comparable cohorts going in other graduate curricula, they're healthier, medical students are, until day 2. Then it starts to diminish. By the end of the first year, every well-being indicator goes down, and every ill-being, this is from Mayo Clinic, great research, anxiety, stress, eventually anger, disillusionment, all that escalates as medical training in increases kind of linearly until about third year of residency. Wow. The only profession who the trainee cohort is more screwed up are lawyers. As training progresses, lawyers progress markedly on measures of depression, pessimism, and paranoia with a small p, because they're trained to think with skepticism, if not cynicism. And that attitudinal switch is one thing if you can learn to do that and turn it off, but it becomes a mindset. And then there's all kind of work-related stresses and loss of nobility from the old days of the valued Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird, trusted village advisor, and a lot of moral distress for a lot of attorneys that we work with. We're not as respected as a profession as I want us to be. So anyway, it harkens back to my favorite slide: be kind. Everybody you meet is fighting a hard battle. I think that's true.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love the To Kill a Mockingbird reference and Atticus Finch.
Yeah,
I love it. That's interesting that you say that, because it brought another thought to my mind. When you deal with the legal world, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. You can't win.
That's right. That's absolutely right. You better be. If you get a lawyer, you want one that's pretty paranoid, so they won't be watching your back.
There you go. Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is such a fun discussion, Wayne. Thank you. Joe, any last thoughts on your end? Anything else you want to touch base on?
What I'd love to close with, and I know we're almost over time, but the concrete tips, Wayne, let's say I have a friend, again, I've already acknowledged I've had a burnout experience. Let's say you see someone struggling. What would you advise? How can we support each other? What can systems do? Or maybe actually, no, we'll just go concrete. One thing, what can we do to support each other? What would be your advice?
That's a great thing. You've heard me reference this before, Joe. The older I get, the more I kind of hate it when speakers use acronyms all the time. I've become one of those. I use them all the time. Think it helps us organize, right? Think wired, whether it's one-on-one or as a leader, as a teacher, as a dean, think wired. Number one, we've got to have well-being conversations. Dare to make it a topic. What we focus on magnifies. What we measure changes. If you measure it publicly, it changes faster. Make discussion of how are you doing, or discussion of how I am doing, my well-being part of it. That's the W in wired. Number two, don't assume, inquire. Mm-hmm. Ask, how are you doing? Now, if you ask particularly what kind of support people need, do that with sophistication of what we know from social support level. What do you need? Or can you tell me one thing I could do to make this a better day for you? That's a great question to ask people. During COVID, I did programs virtually for people over 65 countries. And I proposed that. I got letters from people everywhere, emails, that I asked them, hey, could you tell me one thing I could do to make this a better day for you? No one ever said, yeah, give me $10,000, work all my shifts. People always smile and kind of say, well, nothing. But, the fact that you cared enough to ask made it a better day. So inquire. Now, in this regard, bear in mind from the social support literature, what we know is people who feel supported are going to cope better. But if you got 12 people and you ask them each, what do you need in order to cope better? Some people need information, one form of support. Other people need a shoulder to cry on, another form of social support. Other people don't need either of those things. They just need tangible help, another form of support. And if you provide that stuff, then they have what's called perceived support. This is a place where people care about you. And if you ask the same 12 people every 3 months, everyone's going to switch categories.
Oh, really?
So, inquire. So talk about well-being, make it part of your organizational or institutional or team. One group of a department of pediatrics I work in, they start every meeting. Some faith-based organizations start every meeting with a prayer. Other organizations start every meeting with a reminder of what our core values are. It helps get us focused. It helps everybody calm down and bring them. This Department of Pediatrics starts every meeting with, we're going to go around and continue the discussion. What are you doing to take better care of yourself, Joe? What did you do this way? And it takes 3 minutes. First, it's kind of hokey, but then it got pretty neat. You just inquire about well-being. Talk about well-being. Inquire about how people are doing. The R in my WIRED acronym, what can we do? Recognize. More than anything, people crave recognition. Just recognizing, thank you for what you do, allows me to do. People, physicians forever have said, I wish I was given more regular targeted performance reviews. That's code for, I wish somebody would show up every now and then and notice what I've done and comment on it. So well-being, inquiry, recognition. The fourth is promote efficacy. Efficacy is task-specific self-confidence, task-specific self-confidence. Just because I'm a highly confident person doesn't mean I am secure in my competency to have a crucial conversation. So we've got to do some training about the soft skills.
Yeah.
And then the D is dialogue. The bane of well-being is institutional silence. The more we can cross dialogue, even when we don't know the answers, as leaders give regular stoplight reports. Here's the stuff we talked about before. You did something about it. Green light, yellow light. We didn't do everything. We did something. Red light. We didn't do anything, but we heard you. Just going through the exercise boosts morale. It's like, hey, you paid attention. So wired, think wired. And you can do that conversationally with a friend, one-on-one. You can do any part of it. Do something. It's 1,000% better than what is typically done, which is we avoid each other when somebody's acting out of sorts. And we start doing workarounds in avoiding. And then I can tell you, having studied who gets depressed, who gets suicidal, it's neither burnout nor depression that leads to those tragic outcomes. It's isolation. It's the isolation of I am struggling and nobody seems to care enough to notice, much less to reach out and say, hey, we don't know each other that well, but I know you're not seeming yourself. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help you? So food for thought.
Yeah.
Wired. I love it. Thank you, Wayne.
Yep. Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It's been a privilege to be with you. I admire each of you and what you're doing. Thanks for the privilege of being with you.
Oh my gosh,
and we'll put links in the show notes in case anybody does want to reach out to you for assistance or even more in-depth opportunities, so that there are contacts available if anyone needs a little bit more assistance.
Great. Thank you all so much. Good luck to you.
Thanks so much, Wayne. And indeed, you were way ahead of your time with these books. I mean, my goodness.
I'm old. I mean, I'm old.
I'm going to say seasoned and ahead of your time. I love it.
There you go.
All right, Wayne. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wayne, we're going to send you a Dean's Chat mug. These are from to all of our guests.
Wonderful. Hey, look, I'll be using it. I spend my life on this Zoom all day long using it.
I love it.
I'll use it the next time I'm doing a cast of hundreds. I'll be sure to take a sip.
All right. Oh,
fantastic.
my God. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating. And if you're watching on YouTube, by all means, become a subscriber. Joe and I will continue to bring you leaders in the podiatric profession, but special guests like today, Dr. Sotile. What a wonderful discussion on physician resilience and things that we can do to help each other in the medical world. Thank you so much for all you do and all your contributions to the literature and to the well-being of doctors all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.